Joined once again by actor, producer Noah Wiley. Noah, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Ben.
Noah's show, The Pit, earned him 2 Emmys, one for Best Actor in a Drama Series and one for producing it for Best Series. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We talked about it a little in our first movie, which was Fat City, directed by John Huston with Stacy Keach, Jeff Bridges, Susan Terrell. This movie, Inside Moves, from 1980, directed by Richard Donner. You're here now, and this is Hollywood, but you grew up around this, right?
Grew up in L.A., and one of the benefits of growing up in L.A. in the 70s and 80s was we had this channel called the Z Channel, which was one of the very first pay movie channels. And the programming, they would show movies several times over the course of their run. So you would get to see a movie 3 or 4 times. And Inside Moves is one of the ones that was early rotation and often rotation. So I saw this movie many times. Being a big basketball fan, I thought that aspect of the story was cool. But I've always loved character actors. Character actors always steal the movie for me. And this is a movie that is entirely made up of character actors. It's designed around a bar of misfits and sort of outcasts. And as a result, Dick Donner got to cast some of the best character actors in film and populate this bar with it.
Every actor in this film delivers a memorable performance. But I think more than anybody else, the star of the movie is John Savage. This is one of the great performances in one of the great eras in American history. I mean, his performance is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I'm always shocked that he didn't have a much larger career based on his performance in this movie because it's spectacular. Physically, it's spectacular. The things that he does, it's obviously you're going to find out soon enough that the movie's about a man who tries to commit suicide and fails in the attempt, but as a result has a fractured spine and has to move in a certain way that's sort of limiting. And his physicality, his shyness, his awkwardness, his sensitivity, his apprehension, his demons, all of it, he wears it right on his face. It's one of the most beautiful performances.
There's a moment where he admits how he got the injury to this other group of people who've had life-changing injuries, including Harold Russell, by the way.
Harold Russell from Best Years of Our Lives.
This is the next film he made, 34 years later. And he's really good in this.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really good in Best Years of Our Lives, but he's exceptionally good here. And that scene, I won't spoil the line, but when they talk about, John Savage finally opening up about why he's injured to these guys, and he's embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
And they turn it into a joke, and it's really sweet and endearing, and like immediately you get that sense that
he's now accepted.
Right?
He's found
he's been
his
accepted. He's found his people here. Most of this movie is set in a bar. Max is set in Oakland. They built the bar in L.A. But they shot most of the movie inside the bar, and Donner said that mood that was created in the movie existed as they were making it, and that became the place where they all hung out, where they all made the movie together. They got along and had some significant camaraderie.
Burt Remsen gives a tremendous performance.
He's Stinky, right?
Yeah. I had an opportunity to work with Harold Sylvester, who I think this is Harold's first film. Harold was on The Pit last season, and I couldn't wait to talk to him about Inside Moves. And he was so thrilled that I knew this movie so well. And he
plays a member of the Golden State Warriors.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. He was a major basketball star for LSU in his youth. And he told me that because I assumed that David Morse could play. He apparently could not play basketball at all, David Morse, and that's a double that's doing a lot of the basketball playing in this movie.
So I was so certain that David Morse was a phenomenal basketball player. And I was totally tricked by this, totally tricked. Although when he auditioned for the part, Donner asked him, you play basketball? And of course, Morse gave the answer every actor would give.
Sure,
yeah, fantastic.
Play all the time. It's right there on the resume under Southern accent.
He plays an athlete good enough to where we believe this guy could be a professional basketball player. He's a bartender at the bar with a bum leg. But it turns out, no, they did use a double.
Yep, body double.
Yeah.
Tony Burton, terrific character actor, plays the heavy in this movie. You'd know him from all the Rocky films. He plays Apollo Creed's trainer, always a solid actor. Bill Anderson, who was, big band leader, musician, also was on ER. Towards the end of his career, I got to work with him.
And the only Oscar nomination goes to Diana Scarwood as the waitress at the bar.
She's the angel of mercy that descends on our group that everybody sort of has a crush on. There's a scene where John Savage writes a letter, and he reads the letter out loud, and it's just one of the most beautiful pieces of acting I've ever seen. Their relationship, their chemistry is terrific. She should have had a much bigger career. You know her probably as the daughter in Mommy Dearest, if you know her from anything. But she's wonderful in this movie.
All right, let's watch it, and then we got stuff to say afterwards.
Great.
Here it is from 1980, directed by Richard Donner, cast led by John Savage and David Morse. Inside Moves. Back with Noah Wiley, programmed Inside Moves, the second of his 2-for-1 double feature. So that ending, different than the book, which and Todd Walton's novel ended with a scene with Anne, with the prostitute and David Morse's love interest, still in the condition that we saw her end with in the movie. It was a downer. And Richard Donner, despite having directed The Omen, was not into downers. He said, I've been quoted on this throughout my life. If you want to be depressed, turn on the news. It's free. When he was doing a movie, he was like, no, I want people to be hopeful if there's a possibility for them to be hopeful.
It ends on a hopeful note. It ends on a freeze frame,
Yeah.
one of those classic freeze frame still shots out.
Hey, Rory. Hey,
Rory.
Yeah,
Jerry.
Says Donner said he got that like throughout his life. People would say,
I can imagine.
Yeah, say Rory, Jerry. Yeah.
But it's a lovely, balance shift, where John Savage gets to do the solid for David Morse. It's a nice transference.
It's a way to give us a happy ending without anything unrealistic. Like their lives are still going to be a challenge.
All
right?
they did was push the pimp down the stairs.
All they did was trip a pimp. Right.
That's it. That's all that happens.
They broke a pimp's leg. Right.
But, sweet revenge.
Right. I would presume that Diana Scarwood, the waitress, and John Savage played Rory.
Find their way back together
They're going
eventually.
to be. I mean, they belong together, and they're not going to think, oh, I could get somebody. They're going to be happy together, and they could probably run that bar together.
Yeah.
And David Morse is now, he's in the NBA. He's got some, but he was reminded who his friends are, and he'll do just fine.
He's got his mind right now.
Yeah. If he takes that double with him who can play ball, he can impress a lot of women. Yeah, sky's the limit. Yeah. Inside Moves falls out of this time period that I have picked as the greatest 10 years in American movies, 1967 to 76. And 67, 68, 69 feel a lot more like the 70s in movies than they do the 60s. And this movie belongs in that group, even though it falls outside the date. What was it about this era? It's your favorite era as well.
Primacy of character, perhaps even over plot. I think that was one of the things that distinguished it, is that the characters were really interesting and the characters were really flawed and nuanced and not always traditionally heroic. Or presented in a traditionally heroic light.
It certainly applies to Savage and Morse here.
100%. They tend to be stripped of all the artifice that attended movies during the major studio era. There isn't a big score underneath these scenes. You're not being manipulated with strings or horns.
Right, there's no
the cinematography
MGM.
couldn't be more natural. We didn't talk about it on the first film, but both films have that kind of Conrad Hall natural light. It's just this fluorescence in the bar that are lighting this scene, creating a little ambiance. Really simple, really...
Conrad Hall in Fat City and Laszlo Kovacs here.
Laszlo Kovacs, phenomenal. Deep.
I like that line. I'm going to steal it, the primacy of character over plot or story.
I remember seeing Bruce Dern interviewed once about, that era and why they were popular, and he said because we were interesting. We weren't good looking. We weren't good looking enough to be movie stars, so we had to be interesting characters. We had to bring something else to the table besides a dimpled chin and a good jawline.
MGM is probably, most people would vote as the definitive Hollywood classic movie studio, but Warner Brothers had the grit and MGM had the glitz. But I always
like
will take the grit over
I like
the glitz.
the grit.
Yeah.
Grit on my cowboys,
That's
grit
right.
on my detectives.
The dirt. I want to see
Grit
the
on my
dirt. I don't
gangsters.
mind the dirt, and even everything from, Morse's apartment in this.
Oh, the set dressing is just perfect. It all feels
and why inexplicably he loves this girl. That tells you something about him. He sees himself as broken in some way. Like even that character, and that could have been a throwaway part, but
played by Amy Wright, who was sort of perennial around that time in films like Breaking Away, and gives a lovely sort of nuanced performance to the addict femme fatale in this. She's almost sympathetic and sad.
Oh, she's definitely sympathetic. Even though of course she's hurting the people closest to her, but. I hear this from you actor people all the time, and it's one of the things I love is that you can't hate your character. You have to love your character.
No, that last scene where she sees Rory on the street and he's on the way to go watch Jerry play and he doesn't want to tell her and he mentions Jerry's name and she just says he's never going to make anything of himself. He's a loser. And she has no idea. That's a great moment.
Noah, thank you. This was it was just outstanding.
Entirely my pleasure. Anytime you ask, I will be here.
If you're serious, we'll think of things to bring you in. That's not this great, and thanks for sharing these stories, and thanks for bringing us these two movies.
Entirely my pleasure.
Noah Wiley. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Noah's done for the night, but the movies, of course, continue here on TCM. And as always, they are uncut and commercial free. Stick around.